coming up 2 shares.
Sure. Okay.
Do we have the notebook? Oh yes, the notebook's there. Brilliant. Organised.
Hello.
Hello. Hello. Welcome to Dave and Cathy's Hobby Hangout, where we hobby and hang out. Kind of in the name there, isn't it?
Mhm. Yeah.
We're not ones for confusing long titles. That's a lie. If I can make it confusing and long, I would. But yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, already derailed.
Yes, that was fast.
How are you doing?
I'm okay. Yeah, I guess it's been a bit. Well, do you want to explain how your week
I suppose mine is more relevant.
Context for mine.
So, I don't mind. On
It's Tuesday.
Tuesday, yes.
Not yesterday, last Tuesday.
Thank you for telling me we're now live. That is very useful. I'm not even going to bother pressing not useful to that notification. So, on Tuesday, a bit after lunch, I was messing about on my phone because I use it to give people times when they're coming into the library. And my NHS Test and Trace app updated and came up with one of those. So I've been self-isolating for, 11 days. I get out of self-isolation on the, 7th, basically. So that has made our week and a bit a little bit more interesting, as up until yesterday, I was attempting to keep my distance from everyone, which is very difficult when you live in a house, shared.
Well, like it's a family, rather
Yeah.
than like in a shared household.
Watch him, Adam. And yeah, I did my best.
Government guidance is a bit like try to avoid shared areas, and it's like it's a family home. That would be all the areas.
There's not very many locations I could have isolated myself away in, but given the information we worked out, we thought I was relatively safe. And as of yesterday, I also did a test on Monday because I got really paranoid on Friday due to a cough I had.
We have slight sniffles in the family, and yeah, he tends to cough a lot.
I mean, it's just gone into a full-blown cold now, so yay. But at least it is not.
It's a cold.
It's a cold, definitely a cold.
Feels like a cold.
Definitely a cold. Let me just tell you, COVID tests, not fun. Not fun at all. You know, the video saying, oh, you just stick it in your mouth and wipe it on your tonsils for 5 times.
I have trouble doing the back of my teeth, and they're much further forward than your tonsils.
Yeah, that was not very nice. And then stick it up your nose. Yeah, it wasn't very nice. I mean, I'm glad I got a negative result, but yeah, it was not very nice. So, yeah, our week has been a little strange. I mean, we did get our production meeting last week. That was good. Oh, sneeze. No? Yes? No?
It's great viewing.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just going to sniff through a lot of this. On the plus side, none of you can catch it from us, so.
Well, I mean, not that you have. Well, actually,
The cold.
Yes.
Yeah. So yes. On the plus side, came back with the results very quickly.
That was real quick, actually.
Delivery.
It was under 2 days, wasn't it? It was like a day and a bit.
Yeah, delivery was excellent. So if you do end up having to get one of the postal tests, very good. Other than the actual tests themselves. So
that was always going to be a bit unpleasant.
Yeah, I was always going to say. Yeah. Anyway, so my suggestion is mask up, wash your hands, keep your distance, do everything you can to avoid having to take one of those tests. So.
Yes, so I guess as a knock-on, I've had to do all of the things that require going out of the house, including taking our son to nursery. We did check, and the nursery said we could still take him in because they do temperature checks, and they're pretty careful with things. But so I've had to take him to nursery. I've had to do all the bedtimes. I've had to just do a lot of stuff, which means I haven't really had. Doesn't feel like much time in the evening, and that's making me a bit grumpy and stuff.
Yeah.
So.
But we're back to our normal routine again.
Well, you'll still have to stay in the house, but
yes.
Since you're negative, we're not keeping our distance within the house because that was already not fun and difficult. So, yeah.
And But I mean, this end of the week, you're taking him to nursery anyway. So.
Well, yeah.
But anyway, yes. And no, it's definitely, you cannot catch a computer virus through the live stream either. Glares at someone who should know better. Just put your coffee on the coffee stand thing. That didn't come out as well as I thought. That as a comeback, that was quite terrible. that was terrible.
Okay, that's yes.
CD-ROM drives. It was a
Oh,
bit
people
of a,
putting coffee on the
yeah, because they thought it was a biscuit
It's a
holder
cup holder.
or a cup holder
Okay.
rather than CD-ROM drive.
Yeah, that wasn't at all what you said.
No, it wasn't. I blame my cold for not being able to do very good comebacks.
How would you play the rest of this?
Oh, right.
Sorry,
Okay.
The cold does not affect my ability to
Okay.
do that. What are you making?
What am I making? I've decided to take a brief break from Sasby. I know you're all bitterly disappointed by that. But I've got a new model I just wanted to try and at least start putting together, which is, I don't have actually a nice picture of it, but it's for my Dark Angels army, it's Sammael on Corvus. It's basically a guy on a jet bike with a sword shouting, "Get me closer, I want to hit them with a sword." Reference some people might get.
I've probably spelled that wrong. I'll check with you later.
Yeah. But it's a very cool, but it's a resin model, not finecast, thankfully, but resin. So I'm going to have to do a bit of work on that. So, but yeah, it's a very cool model because I obviously need more stuff for my Dark Angels army because it has a lot of G Stealers to kill, or G Stealer cults to kill.
Is that directed at Chris?
Yes, it is. So what are you making?
So because I sort of feel like I haven't had a lot of free time recently, and also I've kind of gotten out of doing sewing prep before, which I probably should get back into. Well, I started making a mask on my sewing machine, but you can't do sewing machine stuff here.
No, that would be a little bit loud.
So I'm actually cutting out the I want to say pattern, but that feels like too formal a word for what I'm doing. So he's there like, oh, this is made of this, and this is the type of thing it is. And it's like, I'm just cutting shapes out of paper. That's what I'm doing. It's very low tech. But yes, so I'm just cutting out. So I'm working on my 12 Days of Christmas thing again, and I was going to do 9, which to me is 9 Pipers Piping, because I'm basing it off of the picture book I had as a child, which had the 12 Days of Christmas in, and I know that everything after 7 can be a bit controversial because everyone has like different versions. I don't know what the original is or haven't looked into it, but you know, I'm doing the one I am familiar with. So for 9 Pipers Piping, I thought I'd do the Pied Piper of Hamelin. So it's just one of them. But then I need to do some rats as well. But we quite like rats in our house because we used to have pet rats, and I've for a long time liked rats and mice as animals. So yes, so that sort of seemed kind of appropriate. So what I'm doing is I made these years ago. These little felt mice with little ribbons on their tails, which I can't remember. I think it was just something to do because I had a lot of spare felt, and I think I was sending letters out to people at that point, so I was kind of putting some in. But I've just got some about the place. So I sort of like, they're very simple. They're just sort of like a funny teardroppy pear-shaped thing, and then do an ear and a tail and some eyes and whiskers. So I'll probably do something like that. So I'm just cutting out shapes. So I'm going to kind of be cutting and pinning as I do this, which I don't normally do. I normally do the sewing. So this is kind of what I normally do as prep. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah.
Too common. No, this is actually resin. This isn't finecast. I've got finecast upstairs. This is not finecast. Definitely.
It's felt. I don't have any technical details.
It's not wobbly. It's actually quite sturdy. So yeah, it's not actually finecast. And for if you want more information and discussion on finecast, I've no idea where to send you. I'm just message me if you're that interested about. The difference between resin, plastic, metal, and finecast for your wargaming models. Anyway, that was
That was a weird plug that I feel you weren't expecting to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so this week, I'd like to also say in our production meeting, we've actually organised. Yeah, so we have a plan up until the end of the year.
Well,
Be
at least
amazed.
Christmas.
Yeah, potato. I mean, it is pretty much it. But so yes, we won't be so. It means we can do some research. It means we actually do some things that actually involve us having to read something in advance, which is also why we will only be doing these every other week, except for Christmas, because Christmas. We could put a schedule up.
Oh, okay, sure. You're the one who deals with that side of things.
Okay.
But yeah, okay.
So yes. We haven't done what we're reading. That's what we missed.
That is what we've missed, yes.
We should have put that bit of paper on the wall. That's
we didn't get that far. I had to do all the bedtimes. I have time to write things and put them on the wall. Well, I did realise I kind of have a technical detail in that I was just cutting out the rat shape with these regular paper scissors, but now I'm cutting out the felt, so I have to use fabric scissors, and you must not use fabric scissors to cut paper because there are dire consequences.
Is that with is it like pasta and anti-pasta meeting?
Maybe, who knows?
Well, I don't, because you don't let pasta and anti-pasta mix.
I think which makes this less effective. Yes, what we're reading, that's a very good point.
Hello, Jeremy!
Yes, so, shall I go first?
Yeah, as you picked your book up.
So I am currently reading Dangerous Waters by Juliet E. McKenna. And this is the first book in the Hadramel Crisis trilogy. And I was very kindly sent these because my work got very rubbish in August.
Juliet really appreciates the work of university admission officers.
Well,
we all do, to be fair.
It was just very kind of her because August was just like forever. But yes, so this is a trilogy, but it's set in her secondary world fantasy world. Which is, I think, is it Inarin?
I have not read any of them.
No, I know, it's not on the back. So there's a few different sequences that she has in this world. So the first one, which I read all of, was a 5-book one, which kind of had 2 main characters, and the books kind of switched between them. Sort of a bit like the stuff we're talking about later. Then there's a 4-book one, which takes place kind of south of what's called the mainland in this. 3-book one called Tales of the Lascari Revolution, which I've read all of, which was very good. And then this trilogy takes place after that trilogy. And it's basically in this world there are wizards, and the wizards have like elemental magic, so it's kind of the standard 4 Western elements. But then wizards so they'll have an affinity with one element, but then they can learn how to do magic with others, and it's kind of a sign of how good you are as to how well you can do other elements, and how well you can kind of like do the one that's kind of opposed to yours. So like earth mages doing air magic is particularly impressive. It's actually a lot of Juliet's books. I mean, they're very well written, and there's obviously a lot of thought gone into it. And like when there's like a change to the world, it's not like something happens as a reset button, and it's not just like, oh, one thing happens and then the entire world is changed forever. It's always kind of based in like, this is a change to these people's lives, or this is a change to like the previous one, which was about revolution, was a change to that country. And there's mentions of it in this book, but not the specifics. I mean, there's some crossover characters a bit, but you can still pick it up because it just, characters still mention kind of what happened before, and it's kind of. But then again, the aftermath of one thing that was quite personal happens in this book. So there's one set of characters who had a bad encounter with somebody, and it's kind of like the aftermath of what happens with that. So I think the very beginning of this book's actually a little bit into the previous cycle, but in a different location. But then there's also the political stuff. So like all the wizards from kind of like the main continent you see, the mainland as it's called in this, is which is quite a few different countries and used to be part of an empire. The wizards, everyone who's found to be a wizard there kind of gets sent to this island which is hidden, and that's where all the wizards kind of live, and it's basically a wizard-friendly community because in generations past, wizards and people with magic were persecuted and stuff. So it was kind of like a place where people could go to be made safe, because having magic that you can't control is dangerous and causes problems. But it's also somewhere where they can, learn and train and things. But they're very clear on they don't get involved with politics or warfare or any of the kind of like stuff to do with the countries of the mainland. And then south of that, there's the peninsula, which is where they are completely against magic, and they do a lot of raiding and also slaving. So there's stuff about them raiding. This character who gets taken as a slave, and he's like a galley slave. But it's different to chattel slavery. It's more like kind of what I call kind of ancient slavery. Like, so you'd have people who like they captured, and then they're rowing galleys, and they are very badly treated. But it's not like a particular race or like this group. It's just whoever gets taken as a slave is then a slave. And you can tell they are because they're, kind of wretched and stuff. But, so there's somebody who gets taken from the mainland and then, vows revenge on the people who betrayed, or the person who betrayed him to go back. And so there's his story. There's a story of a woman who, her husband died, and then this guy who was working with her husband kind of turned up and said he was her guardian now, because it's in a society where men are very much in charge and women have very few rights. And so he basically terrorised her household and did. And then a lot of it's about the wizards and the island of Hadramaul. So the Archmage, who's obviously like the wizard in charge, is very keen that they don't interfere with the mainland, and it seems to be interfering. But it doesn't stop them from like knowing about stuff and looking into what's happening. And then some senior wizards don't agree with that and think that actually they should be stopping the raiding for this other country, but the Archmage says, well, actually, if this country actually banded together properly, they could stop it themselves. And if we help them now, will they just expect our help with the next thing and the next thing? And also, again, this recent revolution, there was, were people with magic involved in that? Is that just rumour? So it's kind of like you've got several different characters. It's multi-character POV, and a lot of people being cross purposes, but you kind of get what each person thinks what they do. So it's kind of come together quite interestingly. There's more people going to the east and going to different countries there, where again people have completely different customs and stuff, and they have a different approach to magic again there. So they're trying to see if the people who want help, trying to see if they can find magic users who will actually help them, aren't kind of like controlled by this edict against like interference. So I mean, I generally recommend Juliet's books to anyone who likes fantasy. And then she also has a series that's like contemporary fantasy. It's kind of like rural stuff, which starts with Green Man's Heir, which is very hard to search on Amazon because you get a lot of green wigs.
That's fair enough.
But yes, so that's quite good. Enjoying it.
Jeremy said he's just finished book one of the first series, Thieves' Gambit.
Oh yeah, yes.
Thieves' Gamble.
Yes, Thieves' Gambit. Yeah.
Yes. Trying to read from a distance. It's something by Juliet.
Is it Livak? I'm trying to name the characters from the previous series, but yes, it's she's quite a fun character. It shows up, and then I think that sequence Juliet used an earlier, slightly more stereotypical fantasy version book she'd not done. I think she said that she kind of like took parts of that and then did different things with them. But that sequence is generally quite interesting, but it sort of switches perspective between two main characters.
Yes, it's to read something by Juliet is on my list of things to do, but my list of things to do when it comes to reading is quite large, because I keep buying books.
Not just for work.
Not just for work, yes. Although recently I did buy a lot of books for work, which was quite fun. I'm now doing non-fiction, which is not as fun to do, but I did recently buy a lot of fiction books, and because I know no one else in the library service is going to be quite as keen to buy science fiction and fantasy, I may have padded it with a few ones that I know. Some ones I would like to read, some of them I know are good because I've already read them. So yes, what I'm reading at the moment, I finished the Witcher novel.
Oh sure, yeah.
Which pretty much, was the show. Well, part of the show actually doesn't deal with some of the later stuff. But yeah, it was quite good. I will have to find the second in the series, which I think one of my libraries has. So I will have to have a look at that. So I really enjoyed that. What I'm reading at the moment is the books upstairs. Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. Lesson 1 of the Solomance. I think it's technically young adult.
Okay, I didn't realise that was a series because the last couple she did was standalones.
Yes, she started a series here. You may have... so Naomi Novik's done... Novik has done various things. Might know her from the Temeraire series of Dragons in the Napoleonics, which I enjoyed some of. Later ones I didn't enjoy as much, but I think that was more because they weren't quite what I was after in the series. I was after Napoleonics with dragons, and it kind of turned into more of a tour of the world with dragons, and yeah, say not quite what I was after. I should really go back and just read the last couple of books. I think it gets more Napoleonic War with dragons again. But anyway, so those are good, and Uprooted and Spinning Silver.
See, I've read both of those,
which are sort of fairy tale.
Well, they're kind of like folk tale-y ones, very Eastern European stuff. Because judging by name, and also I think a little bit of an interview that I read with her. She's got some ancestry in that part of the world. But yes, so there's Uprooted. I think I like better of the two, but they were both pretty good.
So, Deadly Education. The reason I say it's YA is because it's you've got a young protagonist. They're at a school, and I use school in the loosest sense of the word. The Solomance. There are no teachers, no holidays. Friendships are purely strategic, and the odds of survival are never equal. Basically, it follows Gladriel Higgins, who usually goes by L because, well, Gladriel is a name. So close. And she is going to this school called the Solomance, which is a school for magic users. And it basically... it's really quite terrible as a school. Take Hogwarts and just put everything out to kill you. So Hogwarts...
That's not getting a good Ofsted, what's it?
No, it would get an appalling Ofsted rating.
Why are all magical education places so unpleasant? No one ever seems to go to a pleasant school for magic,
but
do
this basically they get, you know...
Well, I mean, Hadramel seems a bit like a university, so that doesn't seem to be too bad.
This is an enclosed location, and basically they are. A lot of them die very unpleasantly. So it's learn magic or die, and she's trying to survive. She is in her 3rd year. But yes, she is. The trouble is, she is also extremely powerful, but in a rather than, you know, if you want her to light a fire, she will create a wall of flame that will just torch everything kind of way. It's very, very powerful and very destructive, which is not very helpful sometimes. And it is her story about how she is trying to survive. I have not got very far into it, but it's been quite interesting so far. Yes. I'm interested to see where it goes, because obviously it says lesson 1 of the Solomance, so I presume there's more later. Whether we get to graduation in book 1 or whether we go for further on. But yes, it's quite good. I would definitely recommend it as an option to read. But Jerry's really likes Spinning Silver. So is that the one that's loosely based on Sleeping Beauty? No, I'm thinking of something else there, aren't I?
No, that's based on... It was kind of more Rumpelstiltskin turning silver into gold. But it's not actually that, because it's somebody using trading to turn silver into gold.
Okay.
It's very Eastern European, but there's also... Because the one character in that's Jewish. So I think there's quite a bit of that. I mean, without me having much information about it, there's quite a lot of that kind of stuff in that, because like... Because like this girl's family, they're money lenders. So everyone in their community, they're useful, but people dislike them.
Right.
Because that's traditionally the role of Jewish people in much of Europe for a very, very long time. So yeah, there's a little bit of that, and there's a bit of other characters, mostly people who are poor or somewhat dispossessed, sort of trying to find some agency against the sort of a world that's kind of against them, and also in some cases like magical forces. But...
Okay, I obviously had less idea about that. That book. Okay, but yes, I'll definitely worth a read. I think anything of Naomi Novak's is reasonably good. As I say, the later stuff, Temeraire, didn't quite work for me, but as I say, I think I was looking for something different. Certainly the early stuff, the first couple of books, where it was very much a lot more Napoleonic War with dragons was definitely a lot more up my street. But I can see why she went for a bit more of a tourist, taking people around the world. Because why the hell, if you've got a whole world you've developed, why stick with Europe?
Yeah, well, I mean, because that was obviously like different continents. Why I only read some of them as well, but different continents. But kind of going back to Juliet stuff, you've got lots of different cultures and different countries that do things all a bit differently, and kind of contrast that. So I guess you might as well.
Yeah, that's right. Right.
Yes, onto the topic.
Onto the topic. We're going to talk about, because it's the second series is out soon. We're going to talk about, not the whole book, His Dark Materials, more accurately, Northern Lights, the first book in the His Dark Materials series.
Or possibly The Golden Compass.
We don't talk about The Golden Compass.
Well, I mean, it is the US name of it.
Why they just didn't stick with Northern Lights? Americans, I'll be quiet now.
Temeraire is called His Majesty's Dragon in the US. But I guess people don't know the name Temeraire so much in the US because the Napoleonic Wars didn't happen there.
That's fair enough. They were busy doing other things.
I'm not sure about Northern Lights though, because those presumably do happen there as much as here.
Yeah. Anyway, so it has been obviously a book. There's been a film and a TV show, which we will touch on mostly.
Yes, so this will have spoilers for the first book, and the first series of the TV show does contain stuff from the early part of The Subtle Knife, which is the second book. So we'll probably mention that, but it's not like really spoilery. It's just more kind of the background to build up stuff.
Yeah. So let us consult our list of questions. We have a list of questions.
Well, the first thing, it's not questions, it's more like what
talking points.
Yes, I think the first thing was just a brief intro to the
Right.
world,
So,
which you can do since you're,
since I'm talking. So, Non-Lights is set in an alternative England, well, Oxford really, but an alternative world, where the most important factor is 99% of people.
No, all people.
No, some don't.
Oh, okay. That sounds like that's
side
stuff. Okay.
Yeah, they're very rare, extremely rare. But
sure.
They have demons, not horned and fiery. They have an animal that follows them around. It's part
of their soul.
It comes into existence when they are born, although how that works.
No one ever explains that. Like, you see stuff about people dying. Basically, if somebody dies, their demon disappears. Yeah. But you don't see anyone being born.
I presume it just kind of appears.
I guess so.
And it is an animal companion, so they can't stray too far away from them. But it's a part of their soul. It is a representation of them.
But they can talk to it.
Yeah, it can talk, but it can talk. Generally, it is the opposite gender to the person.
But I do remember,
it does. Yeah. It's not always.
I do remember they mentioned that there's a character who's one of those unusual people whose demon is the same gender as them, and I'm like, is that a trans person secretly in the background of this children's series?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not clear.
Never touched on, but yeah, I mean there are. So yeah, you've got.
Or at least just the idea of gender non-conforming or gender diversity.
So it can be pretty much anything. At an early age, they are malleable, so they can flip between shapes.
Shapeshifting.
But at sort of puberty time, they get fixed into a shape that they tend to pick. Yeah.
Well, I think your demon just becomes. Your demon settles, it can't shapeshift anymore. But that's how you know what it is. I don't think you choose it.
No, but it's usually one of the ones, I think, one of the ones that it kind of gravitates toward.
Like a customary one. Okay.
Yeah. So it's So the main character, Lyra, demon, is quite often a sort of a ferret, snow ferret, or a
some sort of ferrety
yeah.
type
But I mean,
thing.
it can be a
He's
sort
a cat sometimes.
yeah, but he's a cat, I think.
Things.
But you know, so they tend to sort of stick to one or two, which often are. So they can have a bird, a dog, or
somebody had a dolphin, so he had to live on a boat because he can't go too far away from it. So sometimes it can be inconvenient.
Gotta wonder what part of his soul is representing. But anyway,
well, I assume he was already from a seafaring
Yeah.
family.
Otherwise, that would be.
When would it have turned into a dolphin if it was in the Midlands?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yes, it's so that's the main difference, and it's an alternative world where there is the Magisterium, who are this big religious power.
They're the church.
Yeah, they're the church, but they're not really the church as we know it, but the church.
Well, it still appears to be something that looks roughly like Christianity.
The
details aren't really clear. It's just
it isn't gone in too much in the first book, certainly for the.
So Lyra, who's the heroine, it's kind of told from her point of view. She is brought up at, I forget the name of the college, at Oxford University.
Jordan.
There you go. I knew it wasn't one of the real
doesn't actually exist.
It was actually from Oxfordshire, so he sort of knows that better. So there's stuff in obviously Pullman's from around there as well. So it's there's stuff in it so it's like very specifically an alternate Oxford. So there's stuff in there that I think is familiar from the actual Oxford, and the botanical gardens are the same. But then there's other stuff that's quite different. And obviously you've got a world where everyone's affected by an animal, so there's some world-building stuff. So Lyra is basically, she's an orphan, or so she's been told, her whole life. But she has an uncle who's a sort of travelling scholar and kind of adventurer, Lord Asriel, who comes to visit her, and he's the one who put her with the scholars at Jordan College, because it's basically a university and there are a load of academics, so it's kind of a bit weird that was where a child was brought to be raised.
But
but her uncle is sort of roughly employed by them or something, and she basically.
But I think it's partly because she's safe there because of.
Yeah, but she's not been told she's in danger.
Scholastic.
Yes, scholastic community or something. Yeah.
So the scholars are allowed to research things that would normally be heretical or not allowed by the.
Heretical is kept away. But she grows up reasonably wild considering she's in such a scholarly environment. But her best friend Roger is also an orphan, but he's a servant. So most of the children around are servants. She's specifically not, but makes friends with them. And there's also.
I imagine there's nobody else to make friends with except for a bunch of scholars.
Yeah.
It's not like one of the universities. It's not like one of the colleges in Oxford with a load of students. It's much more. I think it's much more
like a research facility.
Yeah, but with a lot of.
But like fancy and.
And I think also you got to think that also the technology is.
It's sort of like ours, but things have different names. So they've got something called ambaric, which is basically electricity.
Yeah.
But it's just because electrum is the word it comes from in our language, but amber is the word it comes from in theirs. So. Yeah. I get a feeling it's like almost could be steampunky, but there's not really much focus on tech. But there's like airships and stuff as well.
It's certainly not as advanced as our technology, but it's not.
Well, it's not digital and computery.
No,
that's why I think it feels a bit more steampunky.
But it's not.
There is electricity.
But it's not medieval or.
No. And so Lyra plays with a lot of kids in and around Oxford. They don't mention the Universe's town thing, but I think that might be not in that world. But there's a group of people called Egyptians, who are basically people that live on the canals and are. I want to say nomadic, and that's not quite the right word. Itinerant?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they travel around. So those kids will turn up usually in summer and they'll all play together, but they'll have like kid wars and like, fights and stuff. But children start going missing, and it's people say all the goblins have taken them. It's kind of a bit like an urban myth, but then also children are actually definitely going missing. And basically Lara starts finding out that her uncle is probably in danger because he's researching something very dangerous called dust. And then she attracts the interest of a very glamorous lady called Mrs. Coulter, who decides to take Lyra away from the college and take her to be her assistant. Although she's like, how old is she? Like 12, younger.
I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, she's quite young. Although obviously children are employed a lot more in this world. And Mrs. Coulter is this very glamorous lady, and Lyra's quite impressed by her at first. Although her demon is like a golden monkey, never talks, and is really sinister. And then there are fireworks. But then Lyra starts to realise there's something a bit off with her. Because Lyra really wants to go to the Arctic, because in the Arctic they have what are they called?
Bjorn,
Pansbjorn.
Pansbjorn.
Yeah, basically talking bears that have armour and
they are quite awesome.
Yes.
Wait till little one sees those.
That's true. Yes. Our son's fairly into polar bears at the moment.
He does claim to be one occasionally.
Yes. He was using his polar bear strength earlier to actually move this book, which I didn't realise was funny at the time. But yes. And so Lyra kind of gets away, and then she discovers that Mrs. Coulter has more involvement with the disappearance of these children than you think, because she's involved with some quite powerful people and seems to be doing a lot of stuff for them, which mostly on the surface seems to be kind of like impressing people and kind of like being a bit glamorous about the place, but she's also involved in some pretty dark, nasty stuff. And then Lyra gets taken by the Egyptians, and she sort of is disguised with them, and it turns out they seem to know stuff about it. All these people seem to know a lot of stuff about Lyra that she doesn't know herself. And basically a woman called Ma Costa, whose son Billy has gone missing, reveals that she was Lyra's wet nurse. And she reveals that actually Lyra's uncle is actually her father. And
spoilers, darling, spoilers.
We said there'd be spoilers for the first book. And that her mother is in fact the now rather hated Mrs. Coulter, who is taking all these children up to the Arctic for something. Like, why are you taking children to the Arctic? What can you not do, you know, in England or elsewhere in Europe? So there's a big, the Egyptians decide, because they're a traveller community, they're outsiders to a lot of people, and there is quite a good bit actually where their leader tells Lyra that though she's hiding with them, she must not forget that she is not in fact Egyptian. So she's potentially one of them, but she isn't one of them, and she shouldn't use their stories or decide she is one of them because she's just their guest. Which I thought was an interesting point to make about like having different communities and stuff. But yeah, so they decide to go to the Arctic to get their children back. And so they head up to Svalbard. Is that it?
Yes.
Yeah, so basically on the Arctic Circle. And then Lyra meets a rather drunken and dishevelled polar bear who's lost his armour, and she helps him. So he agrees to help her with the quest because her best friend Roger's also gone missing. So she says she has to go find him.
We need to.
Sorry, have we gone too far?
I think we're going.
We're doing that thing again where we describe the book.
Well, the key also is that there is one aspect you've missed completely.
Mm-hmm. Oh god, yeah, it's on the cover.
So before Lyra, and this is actually quite important to the plot.
Yeah, sorry,
Before Lyra leaves Jordan College, she is gifted an alethiometer by the head of Jordan College, which is the golden compass that that you see on the front, and that
But it's not a compass.
It's not a compass at all.
Which just means a truth meter, I think.
Yes, and basically it for those, there are very few of them around, and with skill and training
and lots of reference books,
you can divine the truth from asking it questions. And the Magisterium have one which they use. It turns out Lyra does not need training, or
she can just kind of do it.
Yeah, so she has a connection to this alethiometer, which as the book goes on strengthens, and it allows her to
find things out.
So which is why she was able to. I think she used it to find out where the armour is.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, there's a lot of time. So Lyra is given this by the Master of Jordan College before she leaves, and she's told to never tell anyone she has it. I think she's told was it Lord Asriel's, and then later it turns out like only a few of her very trusted allies, because because people seem to want to protect Lyra wherever she goes.
Yeah.
And there are also witches who are quite aggressive, and they
yes.
also want to protect Lyra. And you kind of get the sense that
there's something.
There's some sort of whole big important thing that people know about her. The thing with the alethiometry is you have to ask it the right questions.
Yeah.
So if answer what you ask. So if it's just like, where is the bear's armor, you can do that. But if it's like, if you're not sure exactly what you're looking for, that's where there can be problems.
Yeah. So yes, that's where the golden compass comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Is so that and we follow Lyra as she heads up to the north to try and rescue her friends, and all the other characters. She meets a couple of other characters along the way.
So Lee Scoresby, an American
aeronaut.
Yeah, so he has like a hot air balloon basically, or well, it's kind of between a hot air balloon and an airship. But he helps by giving them transport. So she kind of ends up, considering she's quite young, kind of building kind of almost a force behind this whole expedition. And in fact, she
excuse me. So yes, it's you know, we find some truths about the world. We find some.
Yeah, so there's some fairly dark stuff about
there is actually
with the kids. Because I mean, it is a young adult series, but
yeah, it does get quite dark at points.
Yes.
So yes, that's kind of a overview ish. So what's the first talking point?
Well, we've done the book mostly. So did we want to talk about the film a little bit? Because that kind of came up next. Because there was a film called The Golden Compass. And if I'd had more time, I would have checked the casting a little bit more. Which did okay, but wasn't great. I think the casting in that was very good. So Nicole Kidman plays Mrs. Coltrane. She's very golden and shiny and stuff. And Daniel Craig plays Lord Asriel, which I hadn't quite imagined, because I would imagine him, like, I don't know, having brown hair. I know that sounds a bit random, but I know. But I think Daniel Craig did that okay.
Yeah.
So he's a good actor, obviously. And then I've forgotten the name of the guy that plays Lee Scoresby, but he was very, very good.
Can't remember. Would you like me to check?
See, part of me says it's Donald Sutherland, and another part of me goes, no, it's not Donald Sutherland, it's that guy I always get confused for Donald Sutherland. So yeah, you check that, just in case it's not him.
I think it might be Donald Sutherland.
There's another guy who does that, because the whole thing with Lee in the book is that he's Texan, but he's like the very laconic kind of American, so very like, kind of like, not a lot of words, kind of keep himself. Quite often the kind of character that Donald Sutherland has played in things, but also there's another actor that does that kind of character quite well. And I get them confused regularly, so we'll see if it's him. But so that was very good. So I think the casting was good.
Ian McKellen
is
the bear.
Is the bear? Yes. Well, the voice of the bear, because it's not like it's Ian McKellen and mocap being a bear.
No, it's Sam Elliott.
There you go, Sam Elliott.
Yeah.
See, this is the thing, because you always think it's Donald Sutherland, but it's actually Sam Elliott.
Christopher Lee in it.
Oh yes, because is he one of the bad guys?
Yeah.
I didn't remember exactly if it was Christopher Lee, and that's usually how they cast the guy.
Yeah, so you know,
it had a really good cast, and I think it looked quite good, but I think it's quite a long and complex story to put into a film.
Yeah.
And there's also the fact they kind of did the ending of it, because it ends in a very dramatic and dark sort of way. Because basically there's stuff about the Northern Lights, and then there are these photographs taken that Lord Asriel's investigating with there seems to be a city on the other side of the Northern Lights, like they're a window rather than just lights in the sky. And there's also this stuff called dust that everyone seems to get very excited about, and the church don't seem to like it, and it seems to affect why children's demons can change shape, but adults can't, and the church sort of seems to be thinking it's kind of like sin, like, but as a substance. So there's kind of some quite interesting philosophical stuff in there, as well as there being quite a lot of action and adventure, and because I mean, at one point Lyra's actually kidnapped by the bad guys. At one point she goes into the bad guys' experimental facility in the Arctic to get other children out. So she puts herself in danger quite a lot, as well as kind of being pursued and grabbing allies.
But yes, the film kind of doesn't.
Yeah, it's kind of, most of it's there, and it looked fine. But I did see, I think, again, Marco Scherer was reading the book, and he couldn't remember. He said it's in the film, but he didn't remember the plot. So
the bear's armour is too fancy.
Oh yeah, they have opinions on this.
I have opinions. Its armor made by a polar bear is way too fancy for armor made by a polar bear.
Maybe polar bears like fancy armor. Who are you to say what they like?
It's not a matter of liking; it's a matter of making.
Yes, all the polar bears have to make their own armor, and they have a strong connection to it.
Yes, they have paws and not very good with holding hammers. So.
And I mean, Lyra also helps the bear because the bear she befriends, Yorick, is like a disgraced prince of the bears, and he gets deposed, and then she deals with the bear that deposes him. So I mean, this is the thing. There's quite a lot to it.
It's a lot,
and it's hard to stick that in. I think because some novels you can kind of turn into a film, and maybe you just trim some subplots, take some of the characters out, and just focus on the main thing. But I honestly think his Dark Materials ones, they're kind of a bit too meaty to kind of put it all in and it makes sense.
Also, by taking too much out, it makes no sense later on when you do the second film.
That's true. Because I think it means to do the second one but never did, and obviously that's not happening now.
Which obviously gets more confusing as you introduce a whole alternate world in the second book.
Yes. So, shall we... Okay, so then the series that's doing its second series soon is the BBC HBO adaptation. So how do we feel about that one?
Much better than about the film.
Yes.
So the TV show, by the fact it's a TV show,
it's got space.
Actually allows you to do more things, and they've, as we alluded to earlier, they've taken elements of the second book and started seeding them in earlier.
Which makes sense.
Because
that focuses on other characters. So.
Rather than introducing a whole new character very quickly, basically having what you'd have to end up having like 2 episodes of info dump about that character and how they got there before you got then back to Lyra's story.
Yeah.
They've covered that already.
And it also introduces the premise that there is
alternate worlds.
There is alternate worlds, so there's our world. And then there's Lyra's world, which is the one we started in. There's our world, and then there's they do mention in Northern Lights that there are multiple worlds because the goose flaps his wing and says he's just it could have passed through loads and loads of worlds. So
but yes, it's been certainly I've enjoyed it.
That's also got good casting as well, isn't it? So Daphne Keane, isn't it? Plays Lyra. She was in Logan.
She was X-23.
Did they call her that? Anyway,
she was the angry.
She was the angry little girl.
Angry little girl with the spikes.
Clone from Wolverine.
She was called Laura.
Yes, I was. Yes,
Laura and Lyra.
Oh yeah. I mean, she's pretty good because I think the girl that played Lyra in the film was a little bit more likeable, whereas in the book you get the sense that Lyra's quite cheeky and she's quite rebellious and defiant and determined, and she's quite often dragging Roger and also Pantaleimon, who's part of her own soul but is a bit more cautious. All of her caution is outside of her body.
Not good for
probably. But she's quite savvy, and I mean, she ends up being called Lyra Silvertongue because she manages to talk people into things, and she just gathers all these allies around her. But it's kind of one of these things where you've almost got a chosen narrative, but it's like other people know it and are reacting to that, but even people who don't know about that still seem like there's kind of an element of being weighed down by destiny, but it doesn't feel too heavy-handed. But in the TV show, Lyra isn't just the kind of like cute little puppet. She's actually got a hell of a lot of substance to her. I think the film was doing the Hollywood thing of making everyone quite likeable, or having the villains be a bit slippery, and then also happying up the end, or at least cutting the ending before it got to the very, very dark bit. Which this does not do.
No, we'll leave you to read or watch that for yourselves.
Probably to give a content warning, that's a spoiler, but yeah. But yes, it's incredibly dark. But then again, the whole book gets darker and darker. I mean, there are children going missing, there are children being kidnapped, there are children being experimented on. And as I say, it gets very dark, and there's stuff where there's things that only exist in that world, in this fictional world. But even though it's not something that exists in our world, you can tell how awful it is.
Yeah.
So yes. But Lyra goes through some terrible stuff, but she still stays determined, and she still has loyalty to her friends and to what she's trying to do.
But yeah, so the rest of
And then, what's the name of the woman who played Mrs. Coulter? I should check this first.
Would you like me to?
Yes, it's kind of your job, but she was really good. So James McAvoy plays Lord Asriel, which again is not quite the casting I would have expected. Like, I kind of feel like somewhere between him and just Daniel Craig. So I was like, isn't McAvoy like a bit young? I think I was pitched him being older, but I think about it, I read the book when I was a teenager, so in that all adults were kind of old. But now I think about it, well, he's got like a daughter who's pre-teen, so depending on the age.
Ruth Wilson.
There you go, that's it. She was really good. Again, in the books, I don't know why I'm just focusing on people's hair colour, but that's one of the main descriptors I remember from things. She's supposed to be blonde, and I mean, as in Nicole Kidman, I think did a very good job of that role, but Ruth Wilson gives it some real weight because she's sort of, you know, I mean, she doesn't look too dissimilar. Like you could see, like they don't look too dissimilar as you know characters that are obviously supposed to be related. You can see she can do this very glamorous, very sort of like poised thing, but she's also got all this edge right underneath and stuff about the way she talks about things and the way she is. It's like really sinister, but in a sort of, it's kind of like sinister domesticity. So like Lyra's living in her house, and at first everything's fine, but then whenever she doesn't do anything quite right, there's this awful edge underneath. But then you get the feeling there's a lot of other layers to that. Like, oh, what was it? There's one point where she says, "Oh, my mother always said this," and you're like, "Well, that's terrible, and maybe that's why you're so awful." Yes. And then the way she treats her own demon, because her demon never talks. You kind of get the impression from the books and TV show that demons talk to each other and exchange information, but you wouldn't address somebody else's demon unless there's some sort of bizarre emergency, and you would never ever touch somebody else's demon. That's absolutely taboo. But how demons respond to each other kind of indicates the relationship between the humans. But you get demons sort of talking to their own people, but you never. Mrs. Coulter's demon. I don't even know if we know his name.
Not to my knowledge.
He's like this golden monkey. Like, what kind of monkey is it?
I want to say tamarin.
No, because they're quite small. He's quite big. He's like a medium-sized monkey. He's not like an ape. He's a monkey, but obviously he has hands, so he can go and do stuff. And then he does a lot of like crawling around and spying. So he's kind of this very wearing presence. But then, like in the TV show, they show her treating him quite badly. And again, considering that's part of herself, it's very psychological and well done. And there's also the fact that she's doing a lot of incredibly awful and terrible things. And it kind of almost doesn't seem to affect her until you see how it becomes personal to her, and then suddenly she changes tune. So it's quite a good display of kind of villainy, because it's somebody who is awful, but you get the sense, well, there's obviously a background reason why, even if you don't know it all. So that I think is very nuanced performance, brought a lot to it.
Yeah. Well, yes, I think the casting was well done, and I think how they've adapted it, because again, you've as much as you can't just translate the book into a script and go with that. I mean, how they've adapted it.
Not how screenwriting works.
No, exactly. Yeah, I know. How they've adapted it. The pulling of stuff from later books to which is a bit of a gamble, because if they didn't get a second series, they put all that work into what is basically a completely separate plot line. I mean, there are some crossover bits and characters that
has some good actors in as well.
But
so
it's pretty much an entirely separate bit of it. The setup isn't until the second series, so if they didn't get a second series, it would have been a lot of work.
I mean, it's HBO and BBC, so I think they're usually fairly good.
I think they were reasonably positive. I mean, obviously, I think one of the criticisms of the film was that there weren't enough demons. Yes.
And I do feel like that's kind of a thing with the series as well, because like every single human has to have an animal with them of some kind. It can
get very cluttered.
But yeah, it is visually, it'd be like there's just like peacocks and swans and I don't know what I'm saying, birds.
A lot of
mice
birds.
And things, everywhere. But
dogs. A lot of dogs.
Yeah. Well, dogs tend to be people who go into like the police force and guarding and things.
Yeah.
Because don't all the ones up north, they have wolf ones.
So.
But so I think there's an
But I mean, it was definitely.
They were definitely there though. There's a bit where they had a hall and there were loads of perches around the wall, because obviously people have birds with them. There's one character who has a snake that he keeps in his sleeve. That's is it Arion Bacare? I should have checked how to say his name.
I'm going to go with yes.
He is in like every BBC adaptation of a fantasy book we like. that's been on in the last few years. So I keep seeing him in things and going, he was in something else where he was nice, and you're like, well, he was in Good Omens as a demon. I'm like, well, that wasn't it, was it? And then we're looking, and like, no, he was Stephen in Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell.
Yeah.
So he's in like a lot of things, and he's obviously an actor of reasonable range, because it took me a while to realise it was the same actor, because he's being like a shifty guy in one thing, and then like he's being a pleasant guy in another one, and in the other one he's being a demon with a lizard on his head. But
As you do.
But no, it was only when he was pretending to be pleasant I was like, wait, I thought this guy was familiar. He's in something where he plays a pleasant character, but it was the acting that had thrown me off.
Yeah.
So and it's also got Nina Susanna, who was also in Good Omens, in it as the mother of Will, who's the character who's the main character of Subtle Knife. But as I say, they obviously introduced him as a character and his situation and background to sort of seed in, because otherwise, as you say, the second series would be a bit jarring.
Yeah, it would be
his somewhere else entirely, and
cliffhanger,
all
and
of his life.
Yeah, and not really explain the connection and how people moving between worlds. Interestingly, for those who may be interested, so having lived and gone to the Oxford Botanical Gardens, I'm not entirely sure which of the greenhouses they were filming in, but certainly where they come out in our world isn't anywhere near the Botanical Gardens in Oxford.
Didn't
It's
you
in
look
Cardiff.
it up? Yes, because you were looking.
Because I was watching it, going, that ain't Oxford. That's nowhere near. That's not. There's nowhere near that, near the Botanical Gardens. So yeah, I went and looked it up. And then a lot of the other shots are Oxford.
The Oxfordy ones, like the colleges and things.
Because we were going to Oxford around the point where we were watching.
Oh yeah.
So
it was before when you could go places.
So, but yeah, it was a. So yeah, a lot of it is shot in Oxford, but the canal stuff is shot in Oxford. So there's lots of places you go to and see. But as I say, Jordan College doesn't exist. They did say for the film certainly what bits they filmed. But I think they pretty much CGI'd it for the TV show. Because there's no. I don't think that any of the colleges have the kind of roof ornament things that they had in them.
That's right. Well, I mean, you can shoot multiple locations. Were there like 4 different places that were Hogwarts for the films all over the country? So, yeah.
So
I guess it's nice to be from a city that people sometimes put in films. You're like, oh, there's that place. Whereas our city is in films, but always as something else. It's very good at acting. It's been London quite a few times. It's been wherever it is that Ready Player One
Detroit
is supposed to. Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah,
okay.
It was Detroit.
It's been Detroit. Channing Tatum filmed the Kingsman sequel that I haven't seen here a bit.
Yeah, so.
I think it usually gets like set dressed though quite a bit. It's like a character actor of a city, I guess.
But yeah, so yes, I'm looking forward to season 2. I think it will be. It's certainly interesting to see how. I can't remember the Subtle Knife, and certainly I can't remember Amber Spyglass as well. So I may have to reread those for.
I mean, I bought this enormous book as a teenager and just read right through it. So where each book finishes and ends is a bit confusing.
I think towards the end I was.
It's also really you can't read it in bed because you're.
Because when were they published?
Well, I was a teenager and this was collected, so this wasn't like the first edition. So it was a bit ago, 90s at some point. Okay. Yes, because Northern Lights / Golden Compass to Subtle Knife, it's the whole viewpoint change.
95, 97, 2000.
So you go from Lyra to Will, you go from her world to our world. But then it has both of them in for, the rest of it, so it's...
Well, it should be interesting. We'll see what they go. Certainly towards the end when they go a little metaphysical. How far they take that.
Yes, absolutely. That'll be interesting. But yeah, it's quite. It was quite controversial, wasn't it? Because a lot of people were saying Pullman was being anti-Christian. He's like, I'm just being anti-religion.
Certainly, the first book you can get away with reading without. That's relative.
The bad guys are a church in this world, but like
the first book is. I think you can give that to pretty much anyone, and it's not too bad.
there's a lot of hella dark stuff in there, but yes, but it's not religion. Yeah, it's not.
So the people with issues, it's a pretty much not a straight up adventure story, but there's enough of that, and the supernatural stroke religious elements are just kind of set dressing at that point.
Well, yeah, kind of. I suppose the demons kind of are, and there are witches, so witches are odd because their demons can go far away from them.
But they're really only just mentioned. And
yeah, it's just kind of like this world has this weird difference, and so obviously others are different too.
But I think
it's kind of
as it goes along,
thing.
As it goes along, you get more of the metaphysical stuff coming into it, and that's where I think people started having the problems and anti-Christianity.
Well,
Pullman doesn't care less.
Well, Pullman said he didn't think it was anti-Christianity; he thought it was anti-religion in general. So that's where he was coming from. I mean, it does make some good points about various aspects of certainly organised religion,
which I'm sure we can get to if at any point we do the later books.
Yes.
So, what do we have any more talking points to deal with?
No, I think it was mostly just talking through the adaptions and what we thought of them.
So, when did you read them? So when you were a teenager.
Yeah, I think it would have been like when I was about 15 or so. I remember talking about it with a friend on the school bus.
Fair enough.
But I had a mobile phone.
Okay.
So, late 90s? Early noughties?
I was presented...
No, early noughties.
I was presented with the trilogy by my mother, so it would have to been when I was, in my 20s.
Well, that's about tracks, doesn't it?
Yeah. Because she'd read them for something, and then immediately went, yeah. So, well, yes, I can't remember why she read it, but yes, no, I've lost my train of thought where I'm going with that.
Okay. Just asking when we first read them.
Yeah. Just get an idea.
I mean, I think because I'd heard quite a fair bit about it, and so I just bought this massive one because it was in Well, it wasn't Waterstones at the time. What was it? Was it Ossica's or something? There was a bookshop in Worcester that kept changing hands. But I go there quite a lot and spend my pocket money / earnings from my after school or weekends job. So yeah.
Would you recommend it for people to read?
Yeah, I think so. Certainly certainly Northern Lights. See how they get on with it. Although with the caveat that it's quite dark.
Yeah.
Although I think the thing is, I think kids almost don't can have more capacity for that. I mean, obviously, with anyone, it depends person to person if something's the kind of thing that's going to upset you. But I think there's a lot of stuff I remember reading when I was younger and just being like, oh, this is an adventure book or a fantasy book, and bad things are happening because that's how stories go. And now you think back, you're like, that was quite horrible in this book.
No. How about the TV show?
The TV show's good, yeah. People watch that. Yeah. I mean, I think now the TV show exists, it's kind of harder to suggest the film. The film, I'd say the film's just it's a bit more Hollywood, and it's just a lot more stripped down. But again, it's a Hollywood film, so whenever you see an adaptation of a novel, particularly a quite detailed one, as a Hollywood film, you have to be a bit like, well, this is going to be a sort of glamour up, sadness down version of, simplified version of the thing I read. Although that can work the other way, because the Dark is Rising film I don't think was that good, but I watched it and thought, I think the book this is based on is probably a lot more interesting. So, yeah.
Excellent. We give the big thumbs up to Northern Lights. Mm-hmm. Did you cut many rats out?
I cut out 9, which was what I was intending.
Excellent. I have cut out and cleaned some parts of my jet bike. But I wasn't going to sit and use super glue on my laps. So, I have done. That usually results in super glue on my trousers. It's not good for the trousers. So I will do some more gluing to do that later.
Yeah. So yeah, I've got my little, you can see little rat shape. So I've got mostly brown ones, but some grey and black ones as well. Just trying to find a background that's the right colour. So I'll just probably do little ears and noses, and I haven't quite decided how I'm doing the tails yet, so I'll think about that. And I do need to also draw the Pied Piper and figure out how to cut that out and do it in felt. I've kind of got a rough shape. Yeah. I think if I do it from the back and he's just got like a cape, I know it's a cloak, it's like a coat in the book, but he's got like a cape, it's just then doing it two bright colours, but I'll work on that.
Okay.
I'm not going to have all 12 done by Christmas this year either, but
well, that'll be more.
That's alright. It'll be more than last year when there were 6, and the year before when it was like 1 and a lot of cut out pieces.
Yes. It's an ongoing project.
It is an ongoing project, it's true.
Okay. that's us done for today, I think.
Yes, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for watching. We will be back in 2 weeks when we will be talking about... Well, if we've got it, we might as well.
The Expanse.
The Expanse.
And I need to remember everybody's names, and I think we definitely do need some sort of reference material for that.
Yes. I may not bring all the books down. That's a big pile.
That's reasonable. Well, I think, so you've read the books, and I've seen the TV show, so I think if we focus on TV show, because that's the thing I've seen, and then I just have to remember people's names, so I don't just go, oh, it's like the black guy on that space station, or like the white guy on the spaceship. I thought he was called Fred something, or am I getting names?
No, Fred Johnson.
There you go.
Anderson Dawson could be the... Anyway.
All those people that sound South African but aren't.
That'll be next. That'll be in 2 weeks. 2 weeks' time. Thank you for sticking around with us. You might as well go now, because this is going to be me spending the next couple of minutes getting the stop button come up again, because
it likes to hide.
It likes to hide.
Yes. Bye-bye. Stay safe.